Welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. My name is Austin Chadwick, and this is Chris Lucian. And we're continuing our series. Last time we finished off vulnerability. Yeah, vulnerability. And we broke that out. So we actually did a story splitting. We had vulnerability, trust, and appreciation as one card. But then, as Woody says, it's in the doing of the work that we discover the work we must do. So as we were doing it, we were like, these should be separate episodes. So we split them up. And so up next is trust. So I'll go ahead and move that over. But while I'm doing that, what does trust mean to you, Chris? And why is it important to organizational excellence or team excellence?
So trust, a big factor of trust is the idea that you'll be able to be vulnerable, right? And not expect, things like, if something goes wrong, not expect things like, retaliation and stuff like that. That goes into the psychological safety side of it. And so a lot of it is just trusting that other people won't do that, right? And I think that throughout my career, I've seen a lot of people that have just been trained not to trust people. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of these behaviors can be described as things like, covering their tail in certain situations, always having somebody to take fault for something that you might be responsible for, things along those lines. And so some of it goes into extreme ownership, for example. And so being able to trust that you can be honest, candid, that you can be vulnerable, right? Like holding trust with people is a very interesting thing. And I think my favorite realization of trust was just really early in my career. I basically kind of had this idea of like, I need to build myself up in front of others, and I can't really open up vulnerabilities. But that was limiting in the sense that I would do a disproportionate amount of work making myself appear perfect or something along those lines, right? And so that actually was more damaging than good, and a lot of people don't realize this. Like the total collaboration for a group of people will be a function of trust, and productivity is going to be a function of the group collaboration. And if you're not if it's not available for everybody in the group to contribute at a high level, a lack of trust will reduce that level of creativity and collaboration. And so right now, I think I have a goal for myself, which is just trust everyone and to a fault even. And that has been more beneficial for my career than a lot of different ideas I've had in the past and for myself as well.
So what happens when you tell that story is I imagine Chris Lucian, thinking to himself, let me do a value stream map of my current process. I'm putting up all these barriers between me and other people. I've identified this as waste. Let me get rid of that and trust people. Is that how it happened? Or
I mean, like a mental version of that, a little bit. Yeah, it's basically, just getting into it. Every once in a while, I'll make video games and things along those lines. And so it was kind of like a reflection on my creativity. So like I'd make music and I'd make video games and things like that, and I'm like, it always turns out worse when I don't collaborate with other people. I don't get feedback, I don't do anything else. And so there are video games that I've made that have been just like little Android games and things. I've made some in a vacuum and I've had no feedback. I've made some where my wife collaborated with me and she did artwork and things along those lines. The biggest amount of traction was when I invited more collaborators in. And so one thing is that I started buying artwork to put in these games, and the level of quality went way up. And so just reflecting on I've built maybe 10 games now, and reflecting on each iteration of this, I've always, so this was just kind of a realization that like the best creativity, the best work, and then of course, mob programming in general is like a testament to that realization is when you involve everyone and you treat each other equally and you hold trust for each other, then the value of the product goes through the roof. It's in my mind, it's exponential, right? Anecdotally. And so yeah, through iterative experiences and then reflection on the value stream, it ended up becoming something where it's like, if you find yourself not trusting a lot of people,
sure,
you are limiting the quality of your work on every level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was a big realization for me, and I'm still learning from that.
Yeah. Well, just talking with you about it, I'm having some discoveries as we go here. So, I mean, for me, like, trust is like a bare bones virtue, right?
Yeah.
But then when you look at it from like an innovation or company organization perspective, and pragmatically what it means, hearing you talk about it, a couple of things came to mind. One is quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's trust, then the feedback is open and the collaboration can happen, right? And that can really increase quality.
Yeah, how many times do you throw something over the fence to a different department and then be like, oh, well, we were just waiting on them and, it's kind of their fault that we all failed, right? Like how easy is that to have happen in an environment, and how many places have people seen that in their environments, right?
Instead of extreme ownership, collectively owning it and collaborating with them so that not the microsystem succeeds, but the macro system, which is the one that really matters, succeeds, right? But then when you're talking about it, the existence of non-trust in a group of people is actually like waste from a lean perspective, right?
I believe that.
Yeah, because you're saying you were like doing all this extra work because you didn't trust these other people.
Yep.
That means you're doing work that really doesn't need to be done.
Yep.
For the end product, right? And
100%.
So I'll have to keep chewing on that to see how, that, because you see all these extra actions, behaviors happen when there's no trust, right?
Yeah.
And things just don't flow and work just doesn't get done. You have all these inefficiencies built up. And so,
I mean, how much, so like polish has diminishing trade-offs, right? Like if you polish and polish and polish and polish and polish to the point where you have no fear that even a presentation, right? If you just continue polishing and to the point where no one could give you any negative feedback, right? How much time you have to invest in that versus gaining the benefit and accepting some risk and trusting that people will pull the value out and not propagate the negativity, right? So that's why I refer to the book The Four Agreements a lot, because the beginning of that book, not the Four Agreements specifically, but the beginning of the Four Agreements book, they talk a lot about not propagating negativity and through a system of interacting people, and that is something that holding trust can expose as a problem if it exists, and if it doesn't exist, you can iterate much faster. You can be more lean. You can practice lean startup principles. You can practice just lean innovation in general. Where all of that is limited by if you don't expose, if you don't become vulnerable, then then you can't find out if you can trust, and if you can't find out if you can trust, then you're doing a lot of unnecessary work based on the lack of trust. Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we say it every episode now, but it's like the diffusion of innovation applies to every one of these concepts, right? So if you want vulnerability in a team, you want trust in a team, it takes someone to do it and be the innovator, and then you get the early adopters together, right? And then it can help it grow. And so, like what you said, where you just start out trusting everybody, it sounds crazy, it can sound like you just trust everybody, aren't you going to get taken advantage of or whatever? But I think if you apply that to an organization or a team, it is really refreshing when you're with someone and they just trust you, what I mean? And it just kind of breeds to naturally start trusting them, what I mean? And so I've seen it happen. The diffusion innovation happen within a team where a lot of silos, a lot of handoffs, a lot of lack of trust. And then it just takes some people to start collaborating and just extending trust, even if it wasn't deserved necessarily. And it can just start growing, from there. And so,
and there's kind of a value proposition there of being the first person to be doing that, right? Is that, as long as you can maybe always have a backup plan for your career, right? Then if you start behaving this way, you can capitalize on the benefits earlier than everyone else. And that will kind of further accelerate things. And if you're in an environment where that just gets shut down immediately, or people are really harsh to each other, it's an opportunity to display radical candor to the person that's eliminating trust. And if that doesn't go well, then it's probably an indication that you should move on, right?
Yes.
And so because why put yourself through that where would you rather be in an environment that has trust, radical candor, and psychological safety, or would you rather be in an environment that doesn't? And if you can push it forward, you can find the early adopters, and get them all together in the same place and start working this way, and grow it, or you can expose where that happens. And if it's very close to the top where you can't do those things, then it's very easy to kind of do the math there, right? And you'll be working overtime, you'll be staying up late, you'll be stressing about your job. I was talking to somebody recently that it was like, how could you live so close to your office?
Yes.
I wouldn't be able to stop thinking about work that way. And I'm like, my question is, how did you get yourself in an environment where you think about work or your entire drive home, and you're so stressed out about that environment? And is a lack of psychological safety a function of that, right?
Yeah. Well, we're coming to our time box, but I'll queue up something else we'll maybe do another episode on, is if you, like what we were saying before, where you find yourself in a place where I won't name names, but I've had experiences where you extend trust, and it's not reciprocated, or it gets shut down, and those kind of things, right? And so, is that an indication that you should leave or not? And I guess as consultants like to say, it depends, probably, right? And so I think when we had Woody on, he said something like, he said to everybody, wherever you're at, there's probably people who would love to work in a mob programming type way. Let's make it easy for them, kind of thing. And I think wherever you're at, there's probably people who want to work in a trusting kind of way, right? And so I guess then you have to weigh out, is it worth it to find those small set of people who's only small wherever you're at, and maybe make a shell around that where you guys can work together in that way, or is it time to move on? That's kind of a whole nother career topic show thing.
Absolutely.
But
it would be really good. And I think a lot of that, I mean, that could be titled transparency, that could be titled just exposing issues or something along those lines.
Right.
But I like it. It's a great idea for a topic.
But I think we'll close out trust for today.
Yep.
All right, sounds good.
And we trust you to come back and hit the like and subscribe and the little bell. And we'll see you later.
All right, have a good one.